So, welcome to the Memberverse podcast. This is where we interview experts in the industry of fitness or the people that are making impact on the industry of fitness. I'm your host, Dave Pancham, also the founder of Pancham, a fitness marketing agency. And today I have a special guest, Mr. Arin Darcan. Arin, I'm really excited to have on because there's definitely a lot of overlaps in what he does and what we do as well. He runs a remote call center and also coaches people on how to build their own call centers as well. So Arin, I would actually love for you to give us a little bit of your origin story, because I know for myself, I'm like, this is not something one day you just wake up, I'm like, I want to build a call center. Like how did you get to where you are right now, man?
Yeah, man, for sure. And thanks for having me on, by the way. This is awesome. I love this stuff. So how did I get here? Great question, man. So I won't go too far back. It's probably a little bit boring, but in terms of like the agency stuff, so I basically started an agency in, I think it was 2018. And it was just like the typical normal like lead gen kind of agency. And the biggest problem I found was that clients were just never following up with leads. Like, if you said there's a lot of gym owners probably in the fitness space watching this kind of thing, right? So I'm sure everyone watching this, they appreciate that following up with leads is not a fun thing to do. And so a lot of my clients that I was working with, it wasn't in the gym niche, but I was still doing lead generation and they just hated following up. They weren't doing it. And that was the main reason why people left my service, because they just weren't getting results because they wasn't following up. So one day I decided to solve that, built a call center in-house. And then a lot of my agency friends were kind of seeing the success. And they're like, oh, this is quite cool. Like, what are you doing here? And they were like, look, I don't want to go through this whole hassle of building out a call center. Can you kind of borrow yours in a way? And I was like, yeah, cool. We can figure something out. And so I started doing this like white label situation. And very quickly I was like, oh, there's a lot of demand for this. I'm just going to go all out on this white label solution, right? So we started working with a lot of agencies, doing the whole white label calling. And then, yeah, it just went really, really well. And it got to a point where a lot of my clients were starting to look at now, hey, I've white labeled it. How do I actually build this in-house now? And so then I started teaching them that. And now we're at a point where I've got call center mastery, where I've still got team follow-up. That's my white label. I'm still working with a lot of agencies. And now I've got the call center mastery where I'm teaching agency owners how to build it in-house.
How much do you split your time between the two? Like, is there a heavier focus now on helping people build their own, or doing the done for you part of it now?
Yeah, team follow-up is honestly, like, I've got a really great team there, and it pretty much runs itself. Maybe I'll jump on a few calls occasionally. I'll jump on calls every day with my team just to catch up on general stuff. But in terms of just team follow-up, yeah, honestly, like I'm not a huge amount anymore, which is great, because it's just because I've got such a great team. And then obviously if I need to jump in, I will, but most of the time it's pretty hands-off.
All right. Awesome. Well, I got so much to ask on that side of things, because that's where there's definitely a parallel or an overlap for us. For us, when we started doing follow-up for our clients, which we've been doing actually for 5 years, initially it just started with texting. And now it's evolved into texting and calling. What was your journey? Did you start right off the bat, like doing all calling of leads too? Or was it a hybrid? What was that looking like for you guys?
It was calling straight away. I always recognized that calling was the thing that generates the appointments. And so straight away from the very beginning, I was like, right, we need to be calling these leads. And yeah, calling from the very beginning.
So what I find, during that time, you're dealing with a lot of different niches, or like with team follow-up, because you're doing that as a white label service for other agencies or for clients as well. Yep. I'm sure that there's probably so much first off, let's start with the first thing here. What is your process for finding a really good call center agent, right? And the problem we're trying to solve here is really all of this kind of coverage, right? Because I don't know, in your opinion, if you're talking to somebody that maybe is, let's forget the agency side for a second. Let's say it's somebody that has a business and they're considering whether or not they should get a call center. How would you tell them to figure out whether or not I should try to outsource this to somebody else or try to keep it in-house for my business as whatever, call me a chiropractor or a gym owner?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really about it's really specific on your situation, right? So it's not something that's specific, like, oh, I can just say for everyone they should do this or they shouldn't do this or whatever it is. The first thing I would probably say is do you know of any specific call centers that work in your industry, right? If there is one that you've heard of, you've got great referrals from, and it's all really good, because a lot of call centers, even my own, just to be real, is it's a hard business to run. It's heavy. It's very people heavy. There's a lot of human error that gets involved, and it can be difficult to make sure everything's perfect. And that's the thing as well. Every single client has different ways of doing things. Every single gym owner, every single chiro, whoever it is, they all have, when they listen to a call from one of my reps, then they're always going to be able to outperform my reps, always, every day of the week. But the problem is that they haven't got the time to actually follow up with leads, and they're not fast enough, and so we can still outperform them overall, right?
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, it depends how picky you are. Like if you're happy for like a generic call, nothing too crazy, and you expect, there will be probably some mistakes, then you can definitely find a call center who can manage it for you. It will be a bit more expensive, but obviously it's fully hands off, which is awesome. Then the in-house stuff is more if you're a bit more picky. If you've got maybe less of a budget, maybe if you've got more time, less budget, and a bit picky with your calls, then build it in-house. If you're in a situation where you've got less time, more money, and less picky, then I would do the call center route.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I said. Like nobody's gonna outperform you, the owner of your business, or a team member that's in there that knows every nook and cranny of the business, knows the clients, the whole team. Nobody's going to outperform that. The problem that we're solving here, more than anything else, is consistency and coverage, right?
That's exactly it. It's being because the consistency and coverage and speed to lit, all that kind of stuff, right? And also, it's not even just the consistency and coverage. It's like, do you want to be spending 15 hours a week listening to dial tones, or would you rather spend that 15 hours with your family? Whatever it is, like, and so it gets to the point where it's even if your appointments are dropping a little bit compared, if you get 15 hours a week back, like, imagine what you could do to your attention. Imagine if you like focused that all that time was spent on your business and you were figuring out retention strategies, you're figuring out more better sales, like you're still going to see an uplift overall, right? So yeah.
I know you're pretty data driven. Have you ever tried to pull like any data on that? Like, have you ever told a client, like, this is how much time you've actually saved because you're allowing us to do all this? Or has a client ever came back and told you, hey, Arin, since I've started working with you, I've been able to decrease this hours of coverage for this employee, or I got rid of this person?
It's very, very similar stuff to that. So we've had people, they got to a point where they're like, hey, since working with you guys, in the last month, I've saved, it was like 30 something hours or 15 hours a week or something it was. And because of that, I've noticed that my churn has, and that's the first time where I was like, and that's why I just said it then. Cause I was like, I started to see that and I was like, wow, I never thought about that before. Like I was always trying to outperform our clients. I was always trying to like get them more appointments and more shows from what we were doing. And then when the client reached out to me and said that to me, I was like, that's kind of that's a really good point. It's like, even if we're underperforming what you can do, if we can get all this time back and it can reduce your churn and all that, it's a huge win, right? So that was literally because I got a direct feedback from a client. That's why I've noticed that. Yeah,
it's massively impactful for somebody's lifestyle. I mean, I'm not sure. Well, let me ask you this: when you first did your first ever call center client, did you do that first? Like, meaning like, let me go phone the leads myself, or did you immediately put somebody in place and start to have these kind of realizations?
That's a funny story, man. I've actually technically I've never phoned a lead before like that, right? So there was one situation. It was my first ever client, like agency client, and I had one of my team. I had like one setter, and she was doing a great job. I think I had 2 or 3 sets actually. They're doing a great job, but there was one day where one of the accounts got missed. There was some kind of issue, and my client was like, "Look, like my client's waiting for calls. Can you just phone? Can you tell them to phone them?" And no one was able to phone them. No one was around. So I was like, I'll pick up the phone myself and dial. So I dialed like 5 leads, and I was so nervous. I was like, I didn't really know before, right? So I was so nervous, and like, luckily enough, no one picked up the phone. I was like, I've dialed some leads. It's all right. I did I tried.
Oh man,
it was quite funny.
Man,
but I've never actually.
It definitely makes you like empathize a bit more with your agents, right? Like understanding the nervousness that they might be going through.
100%. But then what you got to remember is that like this is what they do. Like if I was doing this day in day out, I'd be like after like 10 minutes I'd have been fine. It was just the first phone calls, right? So it's what you're used to, I guess.
Yeah. My realization we always did the texting from day one when I started the agency, because I just recognized when I first started, I'm like, everybody's doing Facebook ads. Like I need to have something that's a little bit different over here. And Go High Level just came out. I'm like, awesome. I can use this software to help me do it. My first 10 clients, I actually was doing all of the follow-up myself. Now, fortunately, it was just texting, and we built a team like that. And then eventually what it was, I don't know, I forget if it was a couple of years ago or something like that. I saw a client that had a low booking rate, and I was just looking, I'm like, what's going on here? I'm like, let me just call some of these leads and see what happens. And I called like, I don't know, 7 leads or something like that. And I got like 2 or 3 of them scheduled. I'm like, oh gosh, we're leaving stuff on the table here.
It was crazy. I'll tell you what's even crazier is like people with the AI stuff, the texting is like you can I'd say you don't even need humans anymore. Maybe a little bit of human rollover, but most of the time you don't even need humans for the texting anymore. Like it's that good. But the calling, some people I still speak to like, oh yeah, I've got a bot that texts people, and I'm like, do you not understand? Like, people just don't understand how important actually picking up the phone is. And then the worst thing is as well, some people have these limiting beliefs. They're like, oh yeah, but I'd never want to be phoned. It's like, okay, does that mean everyone doesn't want to be like, what? I had one guy join in call center mastery the other day. He was what was the question he asked? He said something, and like it was such a clear limiting belief. And I was like, why do you think that? He was like, well, if someone did that to me, I would rock that. He was going through his whole personal experience, and I was like, you understand, like that's literally the limit. Like that's kind of like a definition of a limiting belief. Like you believe in that the world is a certain way because of the way you feel. Like that's not true at all. I had to break it for him, like go through it with him. But yeah, some people they really don't want to do the calling. And I also think some people don't want to do the calling because they know they should be doing it, but they know it's hard. They've got to find an ISA. They've got to do this. And it's hard work, and that's why people don't want to do it.
I'm sure this question I can bridge off of and come up with a limiting belief from here. But what is your general process for like dealing with a lead, right? Like, what is the expectation? Hey, the client has a new lead. What is the expectation for this call center agent to handle this lead when it's done?
Yeah, for sure. So we have a 24/7 call center, right? So within 5 minutes, 24 hours a day. It doesn't have to be 24 hours. Every client, has different requirements, but regardless, if we are active for whatever time period it is, we have to phone the lead within 5 minutes. And then if that lead doesn't answer the phone, we then phone them twice a day, every day for 7 days in a row. And we also have the texting follow up and all that goes in. But that's the key thing. And what we found as well, when looking at the data, I actually had a client in call center mastery today. I was asking about this, and we crunched some data and found some really cool numbers. We actually found, and this is out of 2,000 appointments we've booked, we found that 1,500 of them appointments came from the speed to lead, the call within 5 minutes. The other 500 appointments, the other 500 appointments came from the power dialer. So, and I was like, wow. First of all, I thought it was like not that, but it like hugely weighted for the speed to lead, which is kind of insane. And then the other things we noticed as well was that when you go beyond about day 3, you honestly don't really get many booked appointments beyond that. You get like 1%, like day 4 to day 6, like 1%. We still do it because there's still you can squeeze a little bit more juice out of them. Mm-hmm. But beyond day 7, I just find that the chance of getting hold of that lead is like, some people will still swear, no, you should do 14 days, you should do a month. I just think the time that your ISAs are spending in them day 7 to day 14, you're just not getting the return on it.
Has that been one where you've encountered people's limiting beliefs, like, oh, you're calling the leads too much, or you're not calling them enough? Like, have you come into that there too?
Yeah, crazy stuff. The other big ones are like appointment reminders. People go crazy with appointment reminders. They're like, oh no, but you got to tell them this, you got to tell them that, and blah blah. And then we saw that the more appointment reminders we sent, people actually started just like disregarding all of them. Right, because if you're sending them so many, they just in their brain they create a filter for your number to be like, this guy is just it's another message. But actually, that message is actually really important. But the other 4 messages weren't important, so they just like started blocking you or whatever else, right? And yeah, the other thing as well, like you said, with people thinking, I wouldn't want to be phoned twice a day, so I'm not gonna. No, I don't want to be people twice a day. That would annoy me. It's like, okay, but if don't get me wrong, it will annoy some people. It does, but if you annoy one person, but you get an extra 5 booked appointments, I'm happy to make that, to make that sacrifice. It's up to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you, so your ideal structure here is like, we got a phone within 5 minutes. And if we don't get a hold of them, we're hitting them twice a day for 7 days in a row. Do you have any other simple like do's and don'ts, like during that whole time period? I mean, look, I know if you're anything like me, you've probably opted into people's ads and you get hit with their messaging and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, oh, this is ugly. Like, I would never respond because I know why your response rate and your booking rate is horrible. Like, do you have any like simple things that you notice that you're like, you should never do this, you should always do this?
There's no specific do's and don'ts really. Like, there's no generic do's and don'ts. I can't give anything like, for everyone they should do this. Because it really does depend on the niche. It really depends on what you're trying to do. Like I was saying to someone earlier, they were talking about, I'd rather be texted and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, depends what niche you're in. Like if you're in a niche where you're helping people with erectile dysfunction, like texting is probably be a better option because most people probably don't want to talk about it over the phone. Do you know what I mean? Like, it really depends on exactly who you're trying to target and what you're doing. So, but in general, like just across the board, I try and give some. I would say that you want to be linking the phone number that you're calling to them knowing who you are, right? So like, especially if you're taking a little bit too long to phone leads, what you don't want happening is someone knowing they've opted into something, then they get a phone call from a number and they kind of don't remember them even opting in. And then they're like, who's this number? And they just don't answer, whatever else. So as soon as they opt in, you want to be texting them just, hey, thanks for opting in. Like, and reminding them the thing they're trying to solve, the problem, you know, the company, that kind of thing. Then at least that way, when they see the number and it kind of bridges in their subconscious at least a little bit. And then you phone them within 5 minutes. They're like, just got a text. I see that number. That number's, like, it must be. Little things like that really help. And making sure that this kind of goes more into actually on the call now. But like, when you're on the call, you don't want to be wasting too much time. Oh, how are you today? Like, no one cares about that. Like, you've got about 5 seconds to be able to get them to actually believe that you're someone they wanted to talk to, right? So I would just straight to the point, try and just remind them, like maybe mention the ad or mention like the brand name or whatever it is. That's going to be like, oh, it's them guys that I submit my information into. Oh, okay, great. You know, that kind of stuff is what I want to be doing straight away, I'd say as well.
Yeah. And then how much are you for you, at least your data wise, like, what are you seeing for like what percentage of the appointments are actually being booked like via call? What percentage are actually being booked via text message? And I'm sure that those rates maybe have changed a little bit over the years because now people are getting texted so much more. Maybe texting rates were higher before, maybe less now.
It's really hard to differentiate because what will happen is a lot of people will be texting and then because what you've got to remember, as we're texting them, we also do the calling throughout, right? So we're calling twice a day every day for 7 days in a row. So maybe yesterday we were texting them a little bit, they didn't respond. And now the next day we phoned them and they've answered and we put them in. Mm-hmm. Should that be a text one? Could we warm them up with a text? So it can be really hard to actually differentiate. So in all honesty, like I don't even try. I track the number of appointments total and number of shows and all that, but I don't really go that deep into the data because it's not really gonna. The whole point of data is to influence your decisions, right? It's to be able to make better decisions in the truth of the world of what's going on. And so, are we getting a good number of appointments? Yes. Are more of them text? More of them? Well, we're going to be like, let's say we get more by text. Does that mean I'm going to stop making phone calls? No, I'm not going to. So why even measure that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what does your process look like for training like a brand new agent to the team?
Yeah, great question, man. So the first, do you want me to start with like the hiring? Like
Sure.
Go through that whole.
Yeah. How do you find? I mean, if you don't have the right person, that's gonna be one of the
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. So the first thing is obviously having a proper hiring funnel in place, right? You need to, again, actually, I'll caveat this with it depends on what scale you're at. If you're like a gym owner, chiro, med spa, whatever, right? And you are just hiring one ISA, then you don't need a whole funnel. You can just you can reach out to your network, to be honest. You could probably reach out to a few of your local friends and family. Maybe there's someone looking for some part-time work, someone in the local area. That'd be really good. If you're trying to build an agency like yourselves and you've got lots of people, then you're going to want to have like a proper funnel in place, because the last thing you want to do is be held ransom by your ISA, right? A lot of people, what happens is their ISA is underperforming, but they just can't fire them because they don't, like, who else is going to do the calls? And it's because they don't have a strong hiring funnel in place. It's the same. It's parallel to like when people keep a bad client on because they need the money. Where if you actually have a strong funnel in place with new sales, you can get rid of that client. You know, it's just kind of a similar thing. Yeah. So we use LinkedIn ads for all of our hiring. Find them on LinkedIn. We've got the whole application form system, works really well. Some of the key things we're looking for there are like having at least 2 monitors. We want them to make sure they're able to be on Go High Level, be on Slack, and if you've got one small monitor, there's no way that someone can do all that calling and have the script open. It's an absolute mess, right?
When did you realize that was a crucial thing, that they have to have 2 monitors?
I was going through people's so we have like a screen recording software to make sure they're doing their job when they're supposed to be, and I was going through some of their stuff and I could see like one girl had like this like half a GHL and then like half a script and like the bot, and I was like, oh my god, how on like I can't even see what's going on. How can she, like, what the hell's going on? So that's when after that I was like, and then what I found as well is I said to my best performing ISA, I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, we have, I asked them to screenshot. I was like, can you show me like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis? They're like, yeah. So they had like 2 monitors. They did. And I was like, okay, that seems, and it looks so much nicer, so much easier, right? Less mistakes, all that kind of stuff. So Yeah, 2 monitors, obviously good internet, right? 20 meg download, 15 uploads, usually what we're looking for. Even in the application form, we make sure they are putting a voice recording of themselves. It can either be a voice recording themselves normally, or we can give them a script, whatever it is. Because what you don't want to be doing is getting on interviews with people, and then literally as soon as they open their mouth, you're like, this guy's got a really heavy accent, or whatever it is, and you're just not a good fit for your company. Then you don't want to waste your time, going through all that kind of stuff. And the other thing with the script speaking exercise or the voice recording is what kind of energy do they have, right? When you're dealing with someone that's applying for a job, and if they're like, hey, my name's Aaron. I've been in the. It's like, hold on a second, you're applying for a job. Like, it's like a first date kind of thing, right? It's like when you're on a first date with someone, that's the best they're gonna be. Like, they're not gonna get any better than that. And so, if like someone's applying for a job and they sound like low energy, what are they gonna be like 6 months into the job when they're like, do you know what I mean? It's just gonna be a mess.
Do you preface to them like, hey, make sure you have energy when you shoot this video? You're like, you just give them the instructions.
No, not at all. I want natural energy. I want natural, like, they should know this. Yeah. Like, what do you think is going to happen, right? So yeah, we want naturally good energy. So it's that one, the internet speeds, monitors. I think there's a few more we asked for. I can't remember that off the top of my head what they are. But then so then when we put them in for interviews, in our situation we have group interviews because again it'd be too much time for my HR department if we were having to hire everyone like one-on-one. On that interview, we'll do like role playing exercises, some script speaking exercises. One of the key things we do is that we will ask someone to read a script, regardless of how good it is. We will give them feedback, and then we will get them to do it again. And regardless of what the feedback is, have they taken that feedback on and actually changed something they like, or have they done the exact same thing again? Mm-hmm. So it just gives you. It's not a complete icebreaker. A complete deal breaker, but it's enough to understand. Like, it gives you a glimpse into their coaching. Can they take feedback? Can they take coaching? Right, that kind of thing. And then from there, we then have we call it nesting. So we have a 2-week period where they're on live projects and they're literally like with someone kind of shadowing, that kind of thing. And we listen to their calls a lot, give them direct feedback. And then after 2 weeks of nesting, they then become like a full ISA, and then they get given their own accounts and blah, blah, blah.
Interesting. And so then so that's their onboarding and training. And then like, what is the ratio, I guess, of like how many clients are they allowed to work on, or or is there a KPI of how many calls they should be handling a day? How do you deal with that?
Yeah. So we don't specifically allocate accounts to ISAs. The reason we don't do that, and this is just because this is team follow-up, by the way. If you have an agency, then it can work differently. But in our situation, we have obviously lots of different niches, lots of different clients. And so if we just had like one ISA on one account, if that ISA is ever ill, they're ever not there, or even on the weekend and things like that, like, who's going to take over that account? It just gets, and we'll still try and assign the same people as much as we can so they get familiar, but everyone needs to be able to know how to run the accounts. Otherwise, and that's the point, the script also needs to be so simple that anyone can pick it up and just run with it. It can't be some crazy 15-minute long sales process, right? Again, if it's your agency or your business, you can do that. But in my situation, it just becomes very hard.
Yeah. So my next question here is, as you said, like, you have to be like, if you're talking to a client, like, you have to accept the fact that there's probably going to be some mistakes, right? So mistakes are part of the game, but how do you handle or do the best to handle like quality assurance and mitigating mistakes?
You have to have solid quality assurance. Half of the battle is your ISAs knowing that you're going to listen to their calls. If they know you're consistently listening to their calls, then that's enough for them to actually continue performing well and doing better, right? So what we have is we have a quota that we essentially have something called pod leaders. So our pod leaders and our quality assurance, they work together, and we have a whole feedback form where we will rate them on, and honestly, I can't even remember what we rate them like I've got a whole team that's what I was saying to you earlier, right? I've got a whole team that handle this stuff now. But it's things like their energy and tonality, how well they followed the script. There's like maybe 2 or 3 other things. And we basically rate them on like a traffic light system, and we give them different points. And then every time we listen to a call and we submit this form, we have an automation that goes through that and then sends the feedback to a Slack channel for that specific setter and for everyone else. So this is the other key thing, is if you've got multiple setters, when you give feedback, you want to make sure that the person individually gets the feedback, but also you want to share that feedback with the whole team. two reasons for this. They can obviously read the feedback, improve hopefully themselves, even though they haven't had to do any calls. And the second thing is that, again, people know you're listening to the calls. Maybe you're listening to only a few calls a week for one particular setter. If they only think you're listening to a few calls a week, then they start to stack. But if they start seeing feedback every single day across all the setters, they're like, it's only a matter of time for them before they hear my calls. I know for a fact that they're going to listen to it at some point. Let's keep performing. So again, it's that battle of making sure they know that you're watching.
Makes sense. How do you does your team deal with any situations like, I guess you'd call it like an escalation situation where like they now have a lead and it's like, oh man, this lead just threw something at me that I have none of this information. I guess let's take a step back there. How do you make sure that your team has enough information so that they can properly handle a lead? And then what do they do when they run into a situation where they don't have all the information or they don't have the information to handle what has been thrown at them?
Yeah. Good question again. Love it. So we usually preface, how do you pronounce it? Every call with, hey, my name's Arin. I'm calling from the scheduling team at blah, 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 whatever company it is, right? So already, like, maybe they might not have picked up on it, but like subconsciously, you've already said you're from the scheduling team. So they don't expect you to be an expert. They don't expect you to be like a chiropractor or whatever it is, right? In terms of having the actual information, we have it all in the script. We have like an FAQ section. So like from our clients, we get the most common questions, most common objections that come up. We have it all there. If we get anything that's really weird, we'll straight up just be like, yeah, look, Dave, I'm just from the scheduling team, but I can book you in for an appointment with blah, blah, and they'll be able to answer all the questions you've got there. Is that cool with you? Oh, okay, great. Usually that's what they say, and then they continue. If they really, really are like, no, I want to speak to someone, blah, blah, and it happens sometimes, then we'll be like, okay, no worries, won't book you in for now, but I'll get the client to give you a call. And then we'll let the client know, hey, this person said this, and they'll usually reach out.
Okay, that's a great one right there, because that's something that we've never done, and I've always taken the approach of like, let's act as if we're part of the team. Have you always done it that way? Have you always done it that way, or if you didn't, when did you make that shift?
We never made we never did it on purpose, like to not do that. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to be a part of the team. We're not going to say it. That was never a thing. It was just we never said it in the script. And then a lot of people would like have weird questions, and we would be like, oh, and I could hear my team getting stuck. They didn't know what to say. And so in the end, I was like, look, why don't we just say we're from the scheduling team? And that way, then it defeats that whole thing. And in your situation where you are working with gyms and you're a gym agency, right? I would get your team really good at knowing about fitness and gyms and that kind of thing. But you are still going to get questions like, can I bring my children with me? Can I, like, these weird kind of things. And in them situations, I would, rather than saying you're from a scheduling team, I'd probably say, oh, I'm not sure. Let me check with coach, whatever the client's name. Let me check with Coach Jamie. How about I book you in? I'll check with Coach Jamie and I'll send you a text. Does that sound good? Okay, great. And I would just do things like that.
So for us, we have the ability to go a bit more niche, hyper focused with our strategy.
Exactly.
How does your team? So I'm sure, because I know you've also worked with gyms as well. And there's definitely a lot of random things that kind of can come your way, especially like, let's say, for instance, like, the offer that we're advertising is a 4-week challenge, 6-week challenge, something along those lines. And we're not advertising the price. So one thing that will happen is the lead will come in, and one of the first things, or one of the things they're going to want to try to figure out along the way there is, what is the price of this thing? And I know the goal for the gym owner is like, let me get them in the gym so I can have a sales appointment with them in front of me and try to convert this person. How do you have your team try to best handle those kinds of situations?
It's a hard one because every client has a different offer, or like some clients are like, yeah, I'm happy for you to give them the price. Like if they don't know the price and then they come in, they're just going to waste my time anyway. So more than happy to give them the price. Other clients are like, tell them it's free. Other clients, so it's all completely different. Like everyone's just got different ways of doing things. And honestly, like I haven't really got like a solid solution for it yet. It's literally just put it in the script, like what the client wants to happen, and just have to, that's kind of the skill of the appointment set, to be able to juggle that and not sound too weird. So it's really up to the client what they want to do. And we just take it from there.
So let's take it as, let's say it's a high ticket challenge, a $500-$600 challenge. I would assume most of your clients don't want them to say $500-$600 because we're probably losing that person. They're getting price without seeing the value, right? What would be the typical process for the team there?
So we'd usually say, first of all, again, depends what the client wants. If they say they're happy for us, because some of them aren't happy for us to say it's free because it's not actually free. So some people get a little bit funny by that. But in general, we'd usually say, someone's like, what's the price? I'd be like, look, I'll be honest with you, like it really does change. It really depends on every single person. Like it depends what your goals are, depends what your blah, blah, blah is, blah, blah, whatever it is. It usually starts at maybe like a few $100s a month or a few $100s for the 6-week challenge. But like I said, like I really can't say right now. You'd have to speak to a coach, blah blah, and that's usually enough. Because like, if someone's really pushing for the price, that in turn for me is like a disqualifier for them. It's like they're really obviously worried about the price. Like maybe they're very price sensitive, and so what I don't want to happen is me book someone in, and then it just wastes the client's time anyway, because it's like they were never going to buy. They literally thought it was a free challenge, and so they're pushing so hard on the price because they don't have any money. Well, then we don't want them in it. So I think giving a rough guide, maybe a couple $100, few $100, whatever it is, that gives them at least it'll scare away the people that aren't serious, but it'll still keep the people that somewhat are, you know?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, the person that's very hung up on price and it's like, sad truth is they probably can't afford it, and it doesn't matter even if you try to change the mindset to see the value of what's called a challenge, how it could change their life. It doesn't matter. Like it's not gonna make a difference on that side.
That's exactly it, man. It's yeah, and it's the same with like anything in sales, really, right? Like it doesn't matter what you're trying to sell. If someone's really, and especially if you try to pivot them off the price and you bring up something else, like, oh, and then you actually get them off it, and they go, no, but what's the price? It's like, all right, that's a red flag for them.
So I know, similar to us, it's like as being the call center here, right? Like your job is to really get bookings. But of course, clients are going to care about, like, big thing is like, well, how many people are actually walking in the door? Like show rate is the next piece here. Of course, you can't directly necessarily do that. You can't force a person to show up. But what would you say to, like, any gym owner that's maybe doing the follow-up themselves here and they're getting somebody scheduled, or they maybe have somebody on their team that's just doing the scheduling? Like, what have you found to be some things that are effective to help improve the show rate of their leads after they're scheduled?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the biggest things is just the conversation they have with you. Right? Like if on the call you are just like not really caring, or you just don't really ask the right questions, and they don't feel heard, then they're immediately like, this is the thing as well. Everyone can get an appointment booked, right? Literally everyone can get an appointment booked. People will book appointments just out of politeness. It's more awkward for them to say, I don't want to book an appointment, than it is just to book the appointment and just not show up, right? So some people are like, oh, I got the appointment booked, but it's like, well, that doesn't really mean anything. What matters is the show. And really quick diversion here. Even when it comes to your agency, Dave, right? I don't know if you give any commissions based on appointments booked and that kind of stuff, but I would actually heavily incentivize the show more than the booked appointments. And a lot of people say to me, oh, but my ISAs don't control the shows. It's like, they do. They really do. Like if we're having a conversation and you tell me, hey man, yeah, look, like I'm about 40 pounds overweight. It's getting to the point where I can't even like tie my shoes up properly. I can't do this. And then your set is like, okay, awesome. So I've got tomorrow at 2 p.m. Like, do you know, like it's going to be absolutely terrible, right? So the first thing is making sure they really feel heard. They're really like building that rapport, and even asking emotionally charged questions and that kind of stuff, right? That's like the fundamental. Everything else is kind of like sprinkling on top. Beyond that is making sure that people know you're like a real place, right? So if you've got like any social proof you can share, if you've got like even like images of like your gym and like, you know, pictures inside, like people can see it's a real thing, that can be really nice, right? Pictures of like yourself, if you're like, you know, take nice pictures, take selfies, like people see you're a real person. Just you want to try and get that human connection as much as possible. They're like that's what you got to think about is from a lead's point of view, when you're going through the whole process, like just think like, hey, if I was this lead, what would I be thinking, right? What would I be doing? And maybe you even want to get like some of your friends and family to opt in and be like, hey, can I just try something out with you? And just maybe if you've already got an ISA, get them to go through the process and just like kind of mystery shop it and see how did you actually feel throughout this process. And that would be a really good idea of how to actually get things locked in.
Yeah, it's just about humanizing the whole relationship as much as possible, because before that it's usually just coming from a digital ad. Maybe it's just an image, so it's like, okay, click on the ad, the offer sounded interesting. You have not become a real business. Well, you are a business, but you haven't become people yet to them.
That's exactly it. And people, they see an ad on Facebook. Again, these aren't like referrals. We're not dealing with like warm leads that have already heard of you and their friends lost 50 pounds working. Yeah, it's not like that. These are cold leads on Facebook. They're just scrolling through, and you're interrupting their day with an ad. They click on the ad. They then get phoned by maybe someone that's from the Dominican Republic, the Philippines, wherever it is. And they're like, hold on, I thought this was a local company. So like your ISA is already on the back foot. So they've already got to do, you've got to do so much extra to get them really like trusting you and locked in. And then once you get to that point, then it's great. But before that, like you said, there's no human touch. You've got to really try and get that human connection as much as possible. And that's also why. So you hear about these AI callers. Mm-hmm. They're really loads of. I'm actually developing my own one as well. It's quite funny because I think that's where the market's going. But at the same time, people keep asking me about them, and they're just not there yet. They're just not good enough yet. Like if even like some of the ones. First of all, with the actual AI callers themselves, like the companies, when they share their examples, their case studies, they're just like, don't even listen to them. I mean, they sound really good.
We've all seen the Air AI one where he's selling the Apple, whatever, headphone stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just not real, right? Like, or maybe it is real, but it's like very, very, very rare. And so with the AI stuff, like even their best ones, like the live best ones, they sound like a robot. Like you can tell it's a robot still. And that's like, imagine if you're cold calling or something, it's a bit different, but imagine you're in a situation where like you are feeling pretty vulnerable about a specific, maybe your weight or something like that. You opt in for an ad, and then you think like this company, like they've used like a bot to call you. It's a bit like they haven't even got the decency to call me up. Mm-hmm. Like, what's it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, again, maybe this is my own belief. Maybe it's like wrong, but just how I see it.
I mean, it could be an absolute turnoff.
Exactly that. Until the AI gets to a point where you genuinely can't tell a difference, I wouldn't touch it personally.
Yeah. How do you feel like? I do agree. I think a lot of the industry is like going in the direction of AI. It's not all 100% there. What are kind of your predictions, and how do you think you'll adapt or maybe integrate with AI as time comes?
I think I'm gonna end up pivoting into a agency that helps people build the AI. I think it's going to be like, hey, Arin, you've got all this knowledge about appointment setting and shows, and you've got all this stuff. How can I get my AI sales agent to do this thing right and do that thing right? And I'm one of my skill sets is automations and processes, and that's how I've been able to build a calling team that, you know, I think we've got like 70, 80 agents now, and I don't really touch it. That's like what I'm good at. So when the AI stuff starts rolling more and more around, I feel like I'm going to become more of that, helping people build it out, get it efficient, and just showing people how to build it out and get it locked in for companies. Because it's not going to be something that's going to be, like even now when you try and use it, there's a lot of prompts, a lot of connecting things, there's a lot of technical stuff that goes on in the background. It's not just plugging in AI, you know?
Yeah, we've tested it ourselves. We've used it a bit, and then sometimes it just goes AWOL. Like, does a complete wrong thing. You're like, oh man, I told this person the wrong thing about this offer. It applied what was going on with the old offer, and like it completely screwed things up. But it's same thing. It's like, hey, expect it when you outsource a team, right? Like if you go overseas with your follow-up team, there's going to be mistakes. If you outsource your follow-up to AI, there's still going to be the same thing. Nothing is going to be the actual human. Perfect. But we're trying to solve the consistency and what was the other one I was thinking about? Consistency and convenience factor there.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly that, man. Exactly that.
Awesome, man. I really, really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure I'm going to touch base again more to learn more about what you're doing to help us out probably too. But Arin, thank you so much. Hey, look, if anybody is kind of like interested in learning more about what you do, maybe leveraging you or looking to build something with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So I'm pretty active on Instagram at the moment. So you can, if you literally just like my first name _ my last name, that's my Instagram. Feel free to come follow me. I've got a load of content about all this stuff pretty much on there, which is I'm posting pretty much every day as well, which is cool. I've got a YouTube channel. I'm trying to get out there a little bit, but I can put that, I can post that down below as well. And then my Facebook profile as well. It's just Arin Darcan. Again, we can post the links. So yeah, anything like that, just come hit me up. And I've also got, if you're an agency and you are looking at trying to do some call center stuff, I've actually got a free program as well that people can join. It's got like a load of really good stuff in there. If you just go to the school community, to type in call center mastery, you'll be able to find the free program, and we can talk to me in there.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for jumping on, bro. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks for having me, man. It's been great. I love it. Appreciate you.